Imagine a forest, a dense, ancient redwood forest in Northern California. The trees are thousands of years old, towering hundreds of feet into the air, blocking out the sun. The ground is covered in ferns and fog. It is a place that feels prehistoric, a place that feels like it belongs to the druids of old Europe or the shamans of a forgotten tribe. Now, imagine that in the middle of this forest, there is a camp. And sitting around the campfire, drinking heavily, laughing and urinating on the ancient trees are the most powerful men in the history of the world. There sits the President of the United States. Next to him is the CEO of the biggest oil company on Earth. Across from them is the head of the Federal Reserve, and beside him is a famous Hollywood actor and a four-star general. They are not wearing suits. They are wearing strange robes. They are chanting in Latin, and they are standing in front of a 40-foot-tall stone statue of an owl. At the base of the owl, a fire is burning, and into that fire they are throwing a small, coffin-shaped effigy. This sounds like the plot of a bad horror movie. It sounds like the fever dream of a conspiracy theorist. But it is not a dream. It is a real place. It has a real address. It has a real membership list. And for 2 weeks every July, it becomes the secret capital of the world. Welcome back to Hidden Atlas. Today, we are going to infiltrate the most exclusive and secretive club on Earth. We are going to expose the Bohemian Grove. We are going to look at the leaked footage that shocked the world. We are going to listen to the audio tapes of Richard Nixon describing the bizarre rituals. We are going to ask why the men who hold the nuclear codes are worshiping a giant stone idol in the woods. And we are going to explore the dark possibility that the world is not run by politicians, but by a cult. To understand the Grove, you have to understand the cognitive dissonance. We are taught that our leaders are rational men. We are taught that they are Christians or atheists or men of science. We are taught that decisions about wars, economy, and laws are made in the White House, in the boardroom, or in the halls of Congress. But history tells us a different story. In September 1942, a group of scientists and military leaders met in secret. They were planning the most destructive weapon ever created, the atomic bomb, the Manhattan Project. Where did they meet to finalize the plan? Not in the Pentagon, not in a laboratory. They met at the Bohemian Grove. The deal that shaped the Cold War and the threat of nuclear annihilation was struck over drinks in a redwood forest under the gaze of the owl. The Bohemian Club was founded in 1872 in San Francisco. Originally, it was a club for artists, writers, and actors, bohemians, people who rejected the stiff, formal culture of the East Coast. But over time, the artists needed money, so they invited rich patrons, bankers, businessmen. Slowly, the patrons took over. The artists became the entertainment, and the rich men became the members. Today, the waiting list to join the Bohemian Club is roughly 15 to 20 years. The initiation fee is tens of thousands of dollars, and you cannot just apply. You have to be invited. The membership list reads like a who's who of the Illuminati. Every Republican president since Herbert Hoover has been a member. The Bush family, the Rockefellers, the Kissingers, Colin Powell, Newt Gingrich, Walter Cronkite. Why do they go there? The official motto of the club is "Weaving spiders come not here." This is a line from Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. It means that business deals and networking, the weaving of webs, are forbidden. The Grove is supposed to be a place where the powerful can relax, escape the public eye, and just be men. But this is a lie. We know from insiders, from leaked diaries, and from the sheer concentration of power that the webs are definitely woven there. They choose the next president there. In 1967, Richard Nixon met with Ronald Reagan at the Grove. It was there that they decided Reagan would step aside and let Nixon run for president. A handshake in the woods determined the fate of America for the next decade. But if it was just a networking club like a golf course, it wouldn't be terrifying. Rich men have always had private clubs. What makes the Bohemian Grove different is the religion. Why is there a shrine? Why is there a ritual sacrifice? Why do they dress up in red, black, and silver robes that look like something out of the Ku Klux Klan or a satanic mass? For over 100 years, rumors swirled about what happened behind the heavy iron gates of the grove. People whispered about strange chants echoing through the valley. They whispered about pagan gods, but there was no proof. The security was too tight. The police in the local town of Monte Rio are hired by the club. The perimeter is guarded by ex-military private security. Until the year 2000. That was the year a radio host from Austin, Texas, decided to do the impossible. His name was Alex Jones. Before he became the controversial figure he is today, he was a documentary filmmaker, and he decided he was going to break into the Bohemian Grove and film the ritual. What he captured on his hidden camera changed the way we look at the global elite forever. It proved that the conspiracy theories were not just theories, they were observations of a reality that is stranger than fiction. On July 15, 2000, Alex Jones and his cameraman, Mike Hansen, slipped through the dense forests surrounding the grove. They didn't jump the main gate. They hiked through the rugged terrain, avoiding the motion sensors, avoiding the thermal cameras, and avoiding the armed guards. They were dressed in khaki pants and blue button-down shirts. They tried to blend in. They tried to look like members. When they emerged from the tree line, they entered a surreal world. They saw hundreds of men walking around, openly drinking. They saw men urinating on trees, laughing loudly. They saw open-air bars and luxury encampments with names like Mandalay, Caveman, and Lost Angels. But as the sun began to set, the atmosphere changed. The drinking stopped. A hush fell over the camp. The men began to move towards a large amphitheater by a lake. Jones and Hansen followed them. They hid their cameras inside bags. They sat among the elite. They were feet away from the masters of the universe. Across the lake, looming out of the darkness, illuminated by floodlights, was the owl. It is a concrete and steel statue, standing 40 feet tall. It is covered in moss to make it look ancient. It stands on a pyramid-like base. It looks stern. It looks terrifying. This is the owl of Bohemia. Suddenly, music began to play. It wasn't pop music. It was orchestral, ominous, cinematic music. It echoed off the redwood trees. A boat appeared on the lake. A small barge crossing the water. On the boat was a figure dressed like the Grim Reaper, poling the boat like Sharon crossing the river Styx. In the boat was a small, body-sized object wrapped in black cloth. Jones zoomed in with his camera. On the shore, priests appeared, men dressed in elaborate robes. Some wore red, some wore black, some wore silver. They carried torches. They began to chant. This is the ceremony known as the Cremation of Care. The high priest, standing before the owl, began a sermon. He spoke to the owl as if it were a living god. He spoke of the dull care that weighs down the hearts of men. "The owl is in his leafy temple," the priest shouted. "Let all within the grove be reverent before him." The script of the ceremony is incredibly dramatic. It talks about banishing the conscience. Care is represented as a nuisance, a burden, something that stops these powerful men from enjoying their lives. So they have to kill it. They took the effigy, the body wrapped in black, from the boat. They placed it on the altar at the feet of the owl. The high priest shouted, "Burn him! Burn him!" And the crowd of 2,000 men, the presidents, the bankers, the CEOs, screamed back, "Burn him!" Jones described the sound as primal. It wasn't a polite gathering, it was a bloodlust. The priest lit the pyre with a torch, and then something technologically bizarre happened. The owl spoke. They used a hidden speaker system inside the statue. The voice of the owl boomed across the valley. It was a deep, distorted, terrifying voice. It accepted the sacrifice. "Fools, fools, fools, when will ye learn that me ye cannot slay?" The fire roared. The effigy caught aflame. Screams, recorded screams, played over the loudspeakers, simulating the sound of a person being burned alive. The men cheered. They applauded. Imagine this scene. The President of the United States, the man who goes on television and talks about family values, talks about the Bible, talks about democracy, is standing in a forest, wearing a robe, cheering while a mock human sacrifice screams in agony. Jones and Hansen managed to escape with the footage. They released it in a documentary called Dark Secrets: Inside Bohemian Grove. The mainstream media tried to ignore it. When they couldn't ignore it, they mocked it. They said, "Oh, it's just a fraternity party. It's just rich guys blowing off steam. It's like a college skit." They called it the Cremation of Care because it symbolizes burning away the stress of the work year. They say care means worry. They're just burning their worries so they can relax. But is that all it is? Look at the symbolism. You don't burn your stress by enacting a mock murder. You don't use a 40-foot idol and high priests for a relaxing vacation. This is ritual magic. In occult traditions, a ritual is a psychodrama. It is a performance designed to alter the consciousness of the participants. By acting out the killing of care, these men are desensitizing themselves. What is care? It is empathy. It is conscience. It is the little voice in your head that says, maybe we shouldn't bomb that country. Maybe we shouldn't foreclose on those 1,000 homes. Maybe we shouldn't poison the water supply. That is care. And every July, the rulers of the world go into the woods to ritually murder their conscience. They burn their humanity so they can return to Washington and Wall Street as cold, ruthless machines. They are sacrificing their empathy to the owl. But who is the owl? Is it just a mascot, or is it something older? To understand the god of the grove, we have to look at ancient mythology. The club claims that the owl represents the goddess Minerva. Minerva is the Roman goddess of wisdom. Owls see in the dark. They see what others cannot. Therefore, the owl is a symbol of the illuminated ones, the wise leaders who steer the ship of state. This is the sanitized, public explanation, but conspiracy theorists and occult scholars point to a darker deity. They point to Moloch. Moloch was an ancient Canaanite god mentioned in the Bible. He was a god of sacrifice, specifically child sacrifice. The ancient Canaanites would build massive bronze statues of Moloch, usually in the shape of a bull or a man with a bull's head. They would heat the statue with fire until it was glowing red, and then they would throw their living babies into the arms of the statue to burn them. They did this to gain power. They believed that by sacrificing the most innocent thing, a child, they would be rewarded with victory in war and infinite wealth. Critics say the Bohemian Grove ritual is a modern reenactment of the Moloch sacrifice. But wait, the skeptics say, Moloch was a bull. The Grove statue is an owl. It can't be Moloch. This is true. However, the history of pagan gods is fluid. In some traditions, Moloch is associated with the owl because they both demand sacrifice in the night, and Lilith, the Sumerian demon of the night, is often depicted with owls. Whether they call it Minerva or Moloch, the mechanism is the same. It is the worship of an entity through fire and effigy. And then there is the question, is the effigy always fake? Official reports say the body they burn is just straw and paper, but for decades there have been dark rumors of snuff films, rumors of children being brought to the grove. A prominent witness was Paul Bonacci, a victim of the Franklin scandal in the late 80s. He testified in court that he was flown to the Bohemian Grove and forced into sexual acts with politicians. He described the layout of the camp perfectly before photos were public. Another witness is Kathy O'Brien, a victim of the MK Ultra mind control program. In her book, Transformation of America, she claims she was taken to the Grove as a sex slave for the elite. She describes the ritual in terrifying detail, claiming that sometimes the sacrifice is not in effigy. These are testimonies from traumatized victims, so mainstream history dismisses them. But when you look at the Alex Jones footage, when you hear the recorded screams, you have to ask, why mimic it so perfectly? If you pretend to be a murderer, if you act out the motions of evil, does it matter if it is fake? The energy you are invoking is real. Richard Nixon, who was a member, is caught on the Watergate tapes talking about the Grove. He sounds disgusted. He says to his chief of staff, H.R. Haldane, "The Bohemian Grove, which I attend from time to time, it is the most faggy, goddamned thing you could ever imagine." Nixon, a hardened politician, was creeped out by it. He saw the weirdness, he saw the homosexual undertones, the pagan strangeness, but he still went. He had to go, because that is where the power is. The Grove is not just a party, it is a binding ritual. When you participate in a crime or a mock crime with a group of people, you are bonded to them forever. It is mutually assured destruction. If I saw you in a robe worshiping an owl and you saw me, we can never betray each other. We have dirt on each other. This creates a unified class of elites, a secret society. It doesn't matter if they are Democrats or Republicans. At the Grove, they sleep in the same tents. Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford, Clinton and Bush. On TV, they pretend to hate each other. In the woods, they are brothers of the owl. This explains why nothing ever changes, why the wars continue regardless of who is president, why the banks always get bailed out, because they are all on the same team, and their team is not the people, their team is the Grove. But the symbolism goes deeper than just the U.S. political system. It connects to the ancient mystery schools of Babylon and Egypt. The owl sees in the dark. The elite consider themselves the illuminated ones, Illuminati. They believe they have the light of knowledge. Lucifer means light bearer, and the rest of us are in the dark. They justify their rule by claiming they are a separate species. They are the shepherds, we are the sheep, and the shepherd has the right to shear the sheep and even to kill the sheep for the good of the farm. The Cremation of Care is the ritual that solidifies this worldview. It is the moment they wash their hands of the suffering they cause. It's not personal, they say to the fire. It's just the way the world works. So, what does the existence of Bohemian Grove tell us about the world we live in? It tells us that we are not living in a secular, scientific democracy. We are living in a neo-pagan oligarchy. The men who print the money, the men who launch the missiles, the men who own the news stations are not rational actors. They are deeply superstitious. They believe in the power of ritual. They believe in the power of symbols. If they believe it, it affects reality. Think about the dates of major events. Wars often start on occult holidays. Buildings are designed with Masonic geometry, like Washington, D.C. The dollar bill is covered in symbols, the pyramid, the eye, the owl hidden in the corner. The Bohemian Grove is just one node in a massive occult grid. There is the Skull and Bone Society at Yale University. Both George Bush's and John Kerry were members. They meet in a tomb. They lie in coffins. They kiss a skull. There is the Bilderberg Group. They meet in hotels, not woods, but the secrecy is the same. There is the Committee of 300, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission. But the Grove is unique because it is where the mask comes off completely. In the boardroom, they wear the mask of the businessman. In the Capitol, they wear the mask of the patriot. In the Grove, they wear the robes of the high priest. They are enacting a drama that goes back to Babylon, the worship of the Baalim, the worship of power for power's sake. And notice the element of fire. In the Bible, fire is purification, but in the Canaanite tradition, fire is consumption. The elite consume the resources of the planet, they consume the labor of the people, and symbolically, they consume their own guilt in the fire of the owl. It is a death cult. They are obsessed with death because they are terrified of it. We discussed this in the transhumanism video. They want to become gods because they know they have failed to be humans. When Alex Jones released his footage, he thought it would wake up the world. He thought people would storm the gates. But the reaction was apathy. Who cares, people said. Let them have their fun. This apathy is the dull care they talk about. We are too tired, too distracted, too entertained to care that our leaders are mocking us. But the veil is lifting. The internet has allowed us to share this information. Millions of people have seen the owl. Millions of people know about the rituals. The mystery is gone. And when the mystery is gone, the power begins to fade. A ritual only works if it is secret. Once you shine a flashlight on it, it just looks like a bunch of old men in silly costumes acting crazy. It loses its majesty. It becomes pathetic. We are seeing the demystification of the elite. We are seeing them not as all-powerful wizards, but as scared, insecure men who need to huddle in the woods and scream at a statue to feel powerful. They are not gods. They are LARPers, and their time is running out. The Great Awakening is the opposite of the cremation of care. It is the return of care. It is the return of empathy. It is the return of conscience. It is the people realizing that we don't need these intermediaries. We don't need these high priests. We don't need their owls or their pyramids. We have the human heart. We have the connection to the true source. The Bohemian Grove stands as a monument to the old world, a world of secrecy, hierarchy, and blood sacrifice. But that world is crumbling. The Redwoods are witnessing the end of an era. The next time you see a politician on TV, smiling, wearing a suit, talking about freedom, close your eyes. Picture him in a red robe. Picture him standing in front of the fire. Hear the screams of the effigy. And ask yourself, is this the man I want leading my future, or is it time for us to lead ourselves? The Hidden Atlas has taken you into the forest of the elite. We have shown you the fire. Now you know who is running the simulation. If this video shocked you, share it. Breaking the secrecy is the only way to break the spell. Do you think the rituals at Bohemian Grove have real power, or is it just theater? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe to Hidden Atlas. We expose the dark so the light can enter. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay human, and beware the owls in the night.